it's really about, are these thought patterns around food, around your body, interrupting your life and then interrupting your actions? Like, oh, I don't want to go to that party because I don't think I look good in anything. It can start small, but it starts chipping away at your social life or chipping away at your ability to show up, feel confident, feel present.
This is Anna Hindell, my guest today. We are going to be talking about the difference between disordered eating and having an eating disorder. We're also going to dive in a little bit to body dysmorphia, having bad body image days, and really this, like she said, finding out if this is affecting your ability to show up and feel confident and feel present in your body. So welcome to Episode 39, Disordered Eating versus Eating Disorders and Body Dysmorphia with psychotherapist Anna Hindell. Welcome to Eat Well, Think Well, Live Well, the podcast for women who want to lose weight but are tired of counting and calculating all the food. I'm your host, Lisa Salisbury. I'm a certified health and weight loss coach and life coach, and most importantly, a recovered chronic dieter. I'll teach you to figure out why you are eating when you aren't hungry instead of worrying so much about what you are eating. Hey everyone, before we jump into my interview with Anna today, I want to remind you that my group program is open. So that is the Eat Well, Think Well, Live Well group coaching program. And that is going to be perfect for you if you have been wanting to give coaching a try, but maybe you've been stopped by the cost because group coaching is about half the cost of one-on-one coaching, or maybe you just didn't want to do it by yourself. This is going to be great to do it together as a group. But let me quickly remind you of my 3 guarantees. Number 1, you're going to lose your first 5 pounds. That is a guarantee. You'll most likely lose more, but everyone has to start with the first 5. And I'll make sure that you are set up to lose as much as you would like to. Really, it's just the getting started that is what is stopping you most of the time. So let's just get over that first 5-pound hurdle, right? Number 2, you're going to know exactly what to do when a craving strikes. So I know you just really want to be able to walk through a room where there's brownies on the counter and not need to grab one. That's food freedom, to see food on the counter and know that you could eat it if you wanted to, but you aren't compelled to. You could plan it, you could wait. There's all sorts of things that you can do, but you don't want to feel compelled to eat it. You're going to know what to do when you have a craving. And the last thing I guarantee is that you will learn what foods and what amounts of those foods really truly work for your body. Because a lot of times you tell me, I just want to be able to eat whatever I want. What you mean there is I just want to eat all of the junk foods, and I'm not going to stop you from eating whatever you truly want to eat. But what you will learn in this program, and one of my guarantees, is that you will get down to figuring out what foods actually work well for you and in what amounts. And this ends up being actually what you want to eat, because that's how you'll discover that you function at your best. So if this sounds perfect for you, and I think it probably is, go ahead and grab the link to register in the show notes and get signed up today. Our first group session is next Tuesday, the 25th. So if you're listening to this at a later date, there will be future groups. So still check the show notes. There should be a wait list if you miss this session. So no worries if you're listening to this at a later date, but if you are listening to this during April, we are starting this April 25th. And so I would love to have you in the group. All right, on to our interview for today. Welcome back to the Eat Well, Think Well, Live Well podcast. I have Anna Hindell here, who's a psychotherapist and yoga teacher. I am excited she reached out to me and offered to be on the podcast. We're going to be talking about a lot of things with disordered eating, body dysmorphia, but first I'm going to have her introduce herself and let us know a little bit about what she does.
Hi, Lisa. I'm really happy to be here. My name's Anna Hindell. I'm a psychotherapist and Iyengar Yoga teacher in New York City. So I'd like to help people get connected with what's going on in their body, with what's going on in their mind. So I work with teenagers, adults, and couples on issues about eating disorders, relationships, anxiety, depression, people that are generally stuck in one way or another in their life. And I help them understand themselves so that they can make the best decisions about how to move forward with what they want.
Great. Okay, you said something yoga teacher, which I did not
Mhm.
get. Ingar,
Okay.
some tell me what that
I,
means.
yeah, so Iyengar Yoga is
Iyengar. Okay.
Iyengar Yoga, yeah, named after BKS Iyengar, who has died. But it is a type of yoga where we use a lot of props, the rope walls, the chairs, the blocks, the bolsters, the straps. And it's an approach of really using classical yoga poses and these props to make yoga accessible to anyone in any condition, in any body. So it's like whether you're in a wheelchair, whatever weight you're at, whatever's going on, there's always something for you to do. We can get you into a pose, we can get you into the experience of doing yoga. So it really has nothing to do with how flexible you are, what you look like, what your poses look like. It's really about the internal work.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
There's so many different types of yoga. I've had another yoga teacher on. I think she told me there was like, I don't know, 40 or 50 types of
I
yoga. And
know. And then when it
so
comes down
many.
to it, I'm like, if you're doing yoga and it works for you, just move toward what makes you happy and what, the teacher
Yeah,
and creating a good relationship there.
sure. So when you work with clients one-on-one, do you primarily talk about eating disorders and disordered eating? Is this kind of your focus?
It's a subspecialty. And before I started private practice, I worked in public and private schools in New York. And particularly teenage girls,
Hmm.
it sort of brought me more into this work as a subspecialty because, the girls' bodies are changing in a very public way. Those feelings start to come up. The messaging we get is that hips and boobs equal fat or could equal fat, depending on, I guess, what your ideal body is, perhaps cultural messages as well. And, that plus my background, I was a gymnast growing up and I competed and I grew up, as my body changing, wearing a leotard, and I had disordered eating myself and worked through that. And it really inspired me to continue working with people with these situations because I know the potential of what it can be like to relearn how to eat, relearn how to have a great relationship with your body, relearn how to live in your body in a healthy way. So today, people do come to me with that. But what I notice is that people come with a range of issues. Someone might
Hmm.
be in the middle of a divorce, and then it's like OPS, I binge and purge late at night. It's almost like this other
Right.
postscript,
Yeah.
or, I have someone who's pregnant and now the body issues are coming up because, her body's changing
Yeah.
and that's bringing up feelings. So it's not ever this straightforward thing. It's usually, it could be a main symptom and symptomatic of other things going on.
Yeah. Interesting you bring up pregnancy because I've told this story on the podcast before, but I have 4 children. And when I was pregnant with my youngest, I have the distinct memory, and she's 15 now, so it's been quite some time, but I do have this distinct memory of thinking to myself, okay, this is it. This is the last time it'll be okay for you to be fat. Obviously, pregnancy is not that. But I just illustrative of where my brain was at that time and where like how my confusion was with what my body should look like. And basically I was thinking, this is the last time I can eat these foods guilt free. And so it created a lot of issues there and led to what I have described before as disordered eating. So let's do talk about that. One of the things that led to my years and years of on and off dieting started in high school for me with being told that I was overweight, even though as I look back in photos, I definitely was not. But, several adults told me that either directly, I had some adults tell me directly, and then I indirectly through just encouraging of the dieting that I was doing. And then through those 9-10 years of having babies and breastfeeding and the roller coaster that puts a woman's body on is what was really difficult for me mentally and led really into, okay, I've just got to figure this out. It's like somehow having my weight go up and down through those times that I wasn't figuring it out instead of knowing that's exactly what it should have. Obviously, I have a lot of compassion for that girl that I was back then now. But at the time, like I just know what I was thinking. And so long story short, I was never diagnosed with an eating disorder. What it would have been would be orthorexia, the obsession with eating healthy. But now I recognize it for sure as disordered eating. And I think that is far more common than what we realize. Things like having extreme anxiety when I didn't know what the exact nutritional information was at a restaurant. Like I needed to know not just the calorie count, but I needed the macro count as well. And, bringing the food scale to the dinner table with all my children and telling them I'm only weighing my portion to make sure I get enough protein because I lift weights. Like that was a total lie. And I knew it was at the time, but that's how I basically covered up the fact that I was trying not to eat too much. That's disordered eating, right? So let's talk about that from your professional opinion. Like I know that, like I can recognize it in my own self and give you examples, but tell us more about what is disordered eating versus an eating disorder.
Yeah, I can get out the DSM, but I'm not going to do that. I would put everyone to sleep. The diagnostic criteria for eating disorders such as anorexia nervosa or bulimia or binge eating disorder are so stringent, and there's a lot of criteria that you need to meet. And to that extent, there's probably fewer people with diagnostic eating disorders than we think, but a much greater number of people with disordered eating. And so it's not a diagnostic term, but it's a term that clinicians use to describe what's going on. And I think your example of what you were doing in your life is a perfect example. And it's almost always co-occurring with something like depression or anxiety or an OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. So there's criteria that is close to diagnostic. So disordered eating is pretty much what you would think of. It could be in a more restrictive zone of, oh, I really shouldn't eat this much. Any thought pattern that starts to interrupt the natural cycle of, I feel hungry, and now I'm going to move toward food to satiate my need. I'm going to digest it, feel the digestion, feel the satisfaction, and move on with my day. I mean, that's ideal for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And any way in which our thoughts interrupt I really shouldn't eat this much, or I can't feel satisfied, I'm going to keep eating. I just almost like a little bit dissociative. And you just kind of, people talk about like inhaling the food, and we've all experienced that at times when, you don't eat all day or for too long. But we want to look at when things, chronicity and intensity of these thought patterns. It's not just a bad day or even a bad week. It's like over time, are these thought patterns getting in the way of your relationship with food, your relationship to take in food, keep it in? And then we get into, the other relationship with your physical body. And that could be get into some body dysmorphia,
Mm-hmm.
which could sometimes start. That's when it's like you think of looking at yourself as if you're looking in a funny mirror. You might be tall, but you see yourself as short and kind of plump when you have a very different body, or vice versa. And then
And with
that can,
that,
yeah,
let me,
go
sorry,
ahead,
let me just ask here.
please.
I feel like similar to disordered eating versus an eating disorder, it's kind of like having a bad body image day and having body dysmorphia. We all have those days where you're like, well, I look like a busted can of biscuits, but if it doesn't cause a lot of disruption in the day, you might just say, well, we're just having a bad body image day, like kind of thing. It's kind of the difference between when I talk about emotions with my clients and we talk about the emotions, say, of depression. And I always say, this is little d depression. We can have a sadness without being big D clinical diagnosable depression. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that you're right on with that. I think that it's kind of like we look in the mirror, oh, that angle, or, I didn't sleep enough. Everything just feels horrible today,
Mm.
my mood and how I look. And it's just going to be one of those days. So those are one-offs, or it might be a week like that. Or if there's an event that may interrupt your appetite, sometimes after surgeries, we lose our appetite, or during our cycle, we want to eat more. These are kind of roll with it type of things. And I work on flexibility sometimes with clients and listening to your body's cues, and we'll get more into that. But it's really about, are these thought patterns around food, around your body, interrupting your life and then interrupting your actions? Like, oh, I don't want to go to that party because I don't think I look good in anything. It can start small, but it starts chipping away at your social life, or chipping away at your ability to show up, feel confident, feel present. And, then the extremes are, starting to isolate yourself, and different variations of ways that we start to feel negative toward ourselves. It's interesting because just like your story of you were growing up, and it sounds like there came to some point where you were like, enough is enough, or I'm doing this dieting and this isn't working for me anymore. And
Oh, I think what you're referring to is I was thinking like I got to get my weight under control. It wasn't really yeah.
oh,
No, it wasn't until
I guess I heard
years
it a
later.
different.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
years later
Okay.
I realized I came into coaching and realized like, oh, the thing that no diet ever gave me was the mindset piece that I offer
Mhm.
now
Mhm.
with my clients is just the idea that when you don't feel like eating what's on your plan, like no diet gives you strategies for that besides
Mhm.
like, oh, if you have a sugar craving, chew some gum. So,
Mhm.
I was slightly overweight and had a gum addiction.
Right, right. And then
I
and
was
then
like
then our tea, and then we get headaches from,
TMG. Yeah.
tight jaw.
I was
Exactly.
having like major like stomach upset from the xylitol actually because I was chewing like 2 packs of gum a day.
Yeah. Right, right. And I've seen that before, with people trying not to eat.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I guess what I'm getting at, there's no direct way to intervene. It's almost like saying someone who's starting to play around with eating, with disordered eating, there's always a need underneath that. And what's that need? Okay, so I'm just trying to lose 5 pounds, but then that becomes another five. Or when the actions and the thought patterns continue in such a way that it's no longer working for the person, and it becomes more disruptive for their life, whether that's a shame cycle, or just a friend maybe saying like, what's up, you're changing, or I've noticed this. That's when it's up to the person to come forward and reach out for help. But until that happens, it's up to the person to realize with their own awareness, oh, I'm doing this thing, and it's monopolizing a lot of my mind space, which it does, because we have to eat many times a day. It's not like a drug where you can go to a 12 step and quit it and then get the support you need.
Sure.
So it's something you have to always face again and again. So I think it becomes really constant, but also the secrecy about disordered eating is so common. And maybe you experience that. I remember feeling that way when I was a teenager because, you don't want to let on that you're restricting. You don't want to let on
Mhm.
that that you're trying to lose weight, because then it's sort of admitting I don't like myself in this body. And you might want to be giving off of a different, there's usually a cognitive dissonance. Like, I want to be a confident person in the world. Oh, but I really just want to be a smaller size. I want to be a smaller version of myself. I don't want to hide in the world. I want to start to be smaller.
Mhm.
There's a lot of different feelings going on. And I think when you start to notice that, and you notice that that's where your mind is going, not being present with your friends, not being present with school or your work. And it does start to take a toll, whether that's depressive symptoms or anxious symptoms.
Mhm.
Then hopefully there's some interception there to kind of, oh, let me check myself, let me reach out for help, let me see, what is this about?
One of the things I work with my clients about when we're talking about like the relationship with food, and that when you are saying like we have to just, we still have to eat every day, we can't just give it up. One of the things that we do is put everything on the table, meaning all foods are available to eat. There's nothing, I don't give any food lists of restrictions. Please don't eat this, don't eat that, only choose from this. That's really a disordered eating pattern when you have a list of foods that you can and cannot eat. So I always tell them everything can be on your plan. And when you allow it all, then you can make conscious decisions about what you feel best eating. And so I find that this helps get out of that I shouldn't be eating this kind of pattern, because when you plan to have a cupcake and then you eat a cupcake, you can really drop a lot of that shame, because you say, I know I wanted to eat this. We're not eating it just at the drop of a hat because someone offered it, or because, we just had this uncontrollable craving. We planned it, we ate it. There's a lot of shame eliminated there. So I don't know if there's something that's likewise we can do with body dysmorphia, because I find that works very well for disordered eating, but loving our bodies where they're at is something I would like to teach my clients better. What do you think on that?
Yeah, there's so many directions I want to go in, but I think that first and foremost, I really like to work from this mind body approach. And no matter, and I like to work with people through establishing their goals. It's like, okay, well, what is it? You really do want to lose weight? Okay, that is fine if you want to do that. But can we also work on accepting yourself as you are right now? And can you feel, sense into your body in this moment? And I have people doing this with me in the room, from body scans of feeling your feet, feeling your legs, feeling your seat, just getting into your breath. And, with these legs, do you feel what they do for you? Can you feel how they take you places? Can you feel how when you breathe, your ribs expand? And this can be really scary for people.
Mm,
It can be really scary for people who spend most of their day and life avoiding feeling anything. If they're hating on their body, disliking their body, desiring a different shape. So, little by little, I really work with people to get them to feel their body, start to have some appreciation, not through here's a prescribed mantra and repeat this thing, but just by really taking them into their lives. Like, okay, great, you're going to the beach. These legs are going to walk you into the water and help you swim. And can you feel your arms treading in the water, and kind of getting them into a sense of what their body does for them, how they feel it, and then likening that to sitting down and eating that cupcake is, do you taste it? Do you feel it? Do you feel how it satiates you? And getting them into those, other feelings that can be really scary about feeling their hunger, chewing, feeling their fullness, and then just sitting with it.
Mm-hmm.
I used to have this woman who would binge and purge multiple times a day. And during therapy, we would have a snack together. And it was like very hard for her. She wanted to eat in front of me. That brought up some shame. And to eat slowly was this relearning
Mm-hmm.
of, oh, I can feel myself eating. This is scary. This is hard. This is different. But it was also her having a sense of herself in the room with me. So there was the relational piece as well as starting to feel herself in the room.
So when you're on your own, if you're not working, with a therapist or a coach to work on feeling all of the parts of your body and that sort of thing, what kind of techniques do you give folks to really stay connected with their body on a day-to-day basis when they're not with you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I like to have them do some general body scans. It can take less than a minute, you know, pausing 3 times a day and feel the weight of your seat in your chair, just anything that will get them both present. And even if it's taking your hands and feeling your legs, like I'm not sure how to feel into my body. Okay, feel your legs, get a sense of them. Take a hand to your chest, feel your belly, all these places. So it's almost like literally feeling yourself, but then it gives you a sense of, I have this 3-dimensional body. I'm not just this neurotic mind that's kind
Mm-hmm.
of going in circles about what am I going to eat, when, all of the anxious or depressive thoughts that are going on.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's a really healthy thing to do no matter what's going on, to just pause and feel what's happening in my body, because it's really the signals from our body that inform the mind.
Mm-hmm.
And the more we can get in touch with that, the more we get in touch with, oh, this is right for me, or this is wrong for me, or how do I make decisions? Oh, I'm getting this information that I'm hungry now because I feel my stomach growling. Okay, so I'm going to move toward food.
Yeah.
Some of these things are seemingly simple, but can be really complicated when you've unlearned how to eat through that hunger cycle.
For sure. That's something that I'm really big on is getting back in touch with our hunger. I feel like there's a twofold problem there. Number one, I think people are afraid of getting hungry. And I think it's because we've been advertised diets that tell us lose 20 pounds, never feel hungry. Like, why? Why do we have to never feel hungry? And I think it's just a natural body signal. I feel like I have to go pee sometimes during the day, and I'm not like, great, here's that body signal. Like, I'm not mad about it, right? Unless I'm like in Target. But like, we're not mad about these other body signals so much as we are about hunger. And so I think we've been promised to lose weight without feeling it. And so somehow we have decided that hunger is bad. So I think that's number one. And then number two, I think that there is a glorification of overeating in our society with our giant portions, with our giant things that were served. And then these cutesy little terms like, oh, #food coma, right? Like, it's actually not that comfortable to be so full that you need to lay down in a dark room. Like, it's not that comfortable. And so I think for those two reasons, both on the hunger side and the fullness side, we just are out of touch with our hunger. And people ask me this all the time, like, but how do I start to feel it again? I mean, I know what I would say, but I'm really interested to know how do you help your clients get back in touch with their hunger signals?
Yeah. Well, I think about someone I used to work with who would drink diet soda, diet drinks all day as a way not to get hungry.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like scary for her, but it was like, well, what would happen if you went an hour without doing that? What if you went an hour and a half? What if you went 2 hours? And we worked with a team I like working with the nutritionist who's working, in that
Mm-hmm.
nutritionist collaboration. So she had some hunger charts. And it
Mm-hmm.
was like, okay, if 10 is starving, it's like, let's wait till you get to a 5. Let's wait till you get to a 6 and just feel it. Let's wait till you get to a 7 before you can drink that drink. But wow, what if you ate something? What if that signal what if you just felt that growl?
Mm-hmm.
And, these are kind of some, again, seemingly little steps, but they're a really big deal for someone and it wasn't like, all right, you're already restricting, let's restrict more. It was more of like, you're drowning yourself. Let's just see what you feel underneath that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When you take away that, what I call a buffer, take away that
Mhm.
buffer, what are you really feeling? Yeah.
Yeah.
People ask me like, what does it feel like to be hungry? Like, what signals am I looking for? And that's, I'm always like, what? Like, has it been so long? And it's
Yeah, it really
amazing.
has been. And something I heard you say was the moral judgments we have in our society around, um, like, oh, eating the cupcake, oh, it's sinful,
Mm-hmm.
it's bad, or when you were pregnant, like, this is the last time I get to be bad. And it reminds me of just how easily we start to put judgments on both hunger and then indulging in that
Mm,
hunger. Because when you feel your hunger, there really is a desire. There's a real movement toward, you have to act, you have to move toward that food to get it. And what does our society think about desire and women? Not that this is always about women, but it's like there's a morality and judgments upon that, and um a lot of value upon blunting your desires and working harder than that and getting above them. You know what I
mhm,
mean?
mhm.
So, that
Like
can move into
controlling them, controlling
controlling
these.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we get into food.
Mhm,
Then we get into controlling food, and then food starts to have judgments. This is good, this is bad. And we impose all of those things. And again, all of these things that just interrupt our animal hunger satiation cycle.
mhm. Yeah, 'cause I always say when we label food good and bad, we're gonna inadvertently label ourselves good and bad for eating those things. I was good because I had a salad, which usually leads to, so I deserve
Right.
XYZ, sugar filled food normally, I think. And so when we drop those morality labels, we tend to be able to include more foods in our plans. And surprisingly, we tend to pick foods that actually make us feel good, because the truth is, I don't feel great eating cupcakes every single day.
Right.
Just doesn't
Right.
actually feel good in my body. Like, I don't feel energized, and like it feels heavy, and kind of when I eat something that's too much sugar, I feel a little nausea. And so when we really say like, this is a food that I can eat, but what I want to do is choose foods that help me feel great. And when they're all available to us, I find that the choices tend to lean towards things that are going to help you feel at your best, right? Which tends to be single
Right.
ingredient, whole food type ingredients.
Yeah, yeah. And I love how you present all foods are great. All foods are fine. because I do work with that paradigm as like, there's no good and bad. It's just what you choose. And let's work toward, you know, what you're moving toward, what feels good. And sometimes people don't even know what feels good. And that's a whole learning in itself. Again, I'm getting more in touch with like, oh, I had more energy when I did that, or I felt well rested. And these are all signs of getting in touch with your experience, which can be so hard for people who have body dysmorphia, who have the disordered eating.
Mm-hmm.
But it's exciting because there's so much potential.
Yeah. Well, speaking of working with you, tell people how they can find you. I know you're in New York.
Yeah, so my website is www.annahindell.com. I am just licensed to work with people through psychotherapy in New York, but I can work through coaching in other states. And I would love to hear from people if they have questions, if something I said resonated with them. I'm also on Instagram at Anna Hindell Psychotherapy. I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook under Anna Hindell.
Okay. Well, we'll definitely put all those links in the show notes. And I really appreciate your time and your wisdom and sharing them with my audience.
Thank you, Lisa. It's been great.
Don't forget to check the show notes for that link to get registered for group coaching today. Today's the day. We publish on Wednesdays, but you do have until next Tuesday, the 25th, when we start to get registered. Even if you miss the first session, we will be recording everything. So feel free to jump in this week or early next week. I really look forward to working with you. And don't forget to, if you still have questions regarding that group program, you are more than welcome to schedule a free strategy session with me, which is just really a time for you to get all of your burning questions answered and to make sure that coaching is really the right fit for you. Hey, thanks for listening today. If you're ready to get some personalized coaching from me, I'd encourage you to schedule a free strategy session. Visit www.wellwithlisa.as.me, or it's easier just to find that link in the show notes. We'll talk about where you currently are with your weight loss goals, and I'll give you some actionable tools you can start implementing right away. Before you go, make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you can receive new episodes right when they're released. And if you're learning something new and enjoying the podcast, I'd love for you to leave me a 5-star rating and a review. Thanks again for joining me, Lisa Salisbury, in this episode of Eat Well, Think Well, Live Well.